Welcome to the Watering Hole Podcast. I'm your host, Mary Riemann. The Watering Hole is a place to come and quench your thirst for meaning, nourish your hunger for inspiration, and feed your need for connection, featuring inspirational talks, curious conversations, mystical meditations, and other artistic expressions exploring themes on life, spirituality, nature, mystery, and so much more. So meet me at the watering hole, and together, let's drink from deep waters. So today, we are exploring emotional renewal. And we live in a culture that doesn't really spend a lot of time thinking or talking about emotional intelligence or emotional well-being. And that lack of awareness, I think, is showing itself more and more in social awkwardness and people who have no clue how to connect, how to read emotions, their own or others. And this leads to a lot of self-consumption and lack of empathy and compassion for others. Our emotions, like our thoughts, provide information, right? Emotions aren't right or wrong. I remember a story that Jerry Brinkman, who was one of the pillars of TLC, used to tell. He would say that he was in an argument with his wife and Donna, and he was like, well, you shouldn't feel that way. And he said the next morning he got up, came downstairs, and there's this big plaque hanging in the dining room that said, emotions aren't right or wrong, they just are. And he said he never said you should or should not feel a certain way again, right? So our thoughts and emotions provide information, and they're intrinsically tied, right? Which comes first, the thought or the emotion? I don't know. It's a chicken or egg question, and I don't know that it really matters. But our thoughts and emotions do impact each other, and we can actually use one or the other to influence one or the other, to transform one or the other. And also, just because we have them doesn't mean they are true. We have to inquire, is this feeling of fear justifiable? What is this thought, or what thought is this feeling of self-hatred, for example, connected to? What's it tied to? What happens to the feeling when I realize that the thought I'm having isn't true or isn't accurate? Look into the relationship between thought and feeling for yourselves. Look into the relationship of thought and feeling for yourselves. The essence of emotional intelligence, or maybe the foundation of emotional intelligence, is self-awareness, empathy, and compassion. Self-awareness in an everyday sense is, do you know what you are feeling and why you are feeling it? Do you know how to manage those feelings? Do you know what someone else is feeling? And can you put these things together in a way that allows you to have good interactions and good relationships? This is everyday self-awareness. Everyday self-awareness. Emotional renewal takes it up a notch. It's a self-awareness that comes from solitude, from spending time alone and engaging in deep reflection, self-inquiry, and having curiosity about how our mind and emotions work on us, so that we can cultivate a depth of understanding that allows us to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment. That's always the key, without judgment, in order to cultivate the capacity to handle ourselves in ways that align with our own sense of purpose, meaning, and values. Being out of alignment with our own sense of purpose, meaning, and values looks like a disproportionate reaction to a situation. Or, for example, name calling or engaging in physical violence when we're in a fight with someone we supposedly love, right? Those are out of alignment with who we want to be. I think I can say that for all of us gathered here. I know when I respond or react in that way, I don't feel good about myself because it is not who I want to be, and it doesn't foster awareness or connection. And so, in short, it is about living with integrity and recognizing that all of us fall short. All of us fall out of integrity at one time or another. But the beauty is that we can always get it back. We can always get it back by doing that inner work and practicing again to be in alignment with the person we want to be. Now, love, we're going to move into love. Love, I don't think is an emotion necessarily. Love, like truth, just is. It just is. Love may even be a synonym for truth. It's an energy underlying our experience of life. Now, our experience in the living of love can and does stir up emotions like joy and sadness, grief, fear, and anger, and they can inform us when we are in or out of the flow of love, just as our emotions can also signal the need for love, right? Alerting us that we are in the midst of a situation that calls for love, like witnessing or experiencing injustice or oppression. You know, those times when compassion is called for. But love, like truth, can't be captured. Love can't be nailed down. And the whole Easter story, celebrating what's called Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection, is a story based on an attempt to nail love down, to capture it, to make love conform, to make demands on love, to name it, label it, control it, and conquer it. And as we know, the story insists that even death can't do that. Even death cannot destroy love. So staying in the flow of love, right? Love is dynamic, love is changing, love is moving. Staying in the flow of love is key to emotional renewal. Now, it's a nice synchronicity to me that today we're contemplating emotional renewal on Easter, because the stories and mythos around Jesus provide us some juicy insights about this very thing. And having moved away from Christianity, it was fun for me to sort of go back to those stories and find out how they inform us on this topic, right? Jesus is or was considered to be a person who walked in love. He was love incarnate, a model, we say, of true love. And some of the stories around his life give us an indication of how we can remain in the flow of love amidst life's trials and travails. And I think staying in the flow of love is the way to emotional renewal. So let's start with the resurrection story, right? That's what the Christian church is celebrating today, the resurrection of Jesus. So let's start there. Jesus is dead. His body's been placed in a tomb. And the next day, Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb to visit the body and prepare it for burial. And when she gets there, the stones rolled away from the tomb and there is no body. And she's confused. And she's standing there outside the tomb, lost. Like, what's going on? And then she hears in Jesus' voice her name being called. And when she realizes that Jesus has appeared to her post-death, he says to her, don't be afraid and don't cling to me. And then he says, and go tell the others what your experience has been. So go tell the others that love can't be killed. Go tell the others that death has nothing on love. Go tell the others that love lives on. He didn't say don't grieve. He did not say don't grieve for me. He said don't cling. Feel the feelings and drop the story. Feel the feelings, but drop the story. As Anthony DeMello emphasizes in his book, The Way to Love, perfect love casts out fear. Where there is love, there are no demands, no expectations, no dependency. He says, I don't demand that you make me happy. My happiness does not lie in you. In other words, you are not responsible for my happiness. And I would not give you, frankly, I will not give you that power to be a person who determines my well-being or my happiness. He says, I enjoy your company immensely, but I do not cling. He says, in fact, if you were to leave me, I won't feel sorry for myself. Again, I enjoy your company immensely, but I do not cling. To enjoy but not cling, to appreciate and not possess, these are indications of true love. So to stay in the flow of love, there can be no attachment. Story after story about JC shows us this. You know, there's a story where he's talking to crowds of people, and his mom and his brothers and sisters show up. And one of his friends comes to him and says, hey, your family's here, your mom and your brothers and sisters. And he says, who is my brother and sister? Who is my mother? As if to say that love can't be defined by a role, and it doesn't just come with a title. These things don't give us special access to love. And there is no obligation with love. There is no duty. Love is free. Love doesn't need to be earned. Love is. Love is. It's like the fish in the sea seeking water. We're so immersed in it that we don't realize it's the very thing that gives us life. We are immersed in love. Just look around. Look at the faces on the screen. Look out your window and see the beauty. That's love. And then there's a story where Jesus is approached by a rich man who says, you know, I've done everything by the letter of the law. I've kept all the commandments. I've treated people fairly. I've enacted compassion. What else do I have to do to experience the kingdom of God? What else do I have to do? And Jesus says, let go of all that you possess. Let go of your title, let go of your role, let go of your position. In other words, let go of your sense of ownership and deservedness. These are things that we cannot take with us when we die, right? And to experience the kingdom of heaven is to experience freedom. It's to experience joy. It's to experience fullness and wholeness. It's to experience well-being. And if we are tied to our title, to being seen in one way or another, to being praised by others, to getting approval from others, then we are not free. We are actually possessed. We are actually possessed. And so the way to freedom is to let go of our possessions. And that doesn't mean that you don't keep a roof over your head. It just means that it doesn't mean anything about who you are that you have a roof over your head. It doesn't say anything about the quality of who you are, about the fact that we are, all of us, love incarnate. We don't need a house to prove it. We don't need money to prove it. We don't need a title to prove it. Be it. In fact, those things can be a hindrance because they get tied to our ego, and we start to think, wow, look at me. I got all these things, and that says something about me. Jesus made no bones about it. He was like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't say a fucking thing about who you are. Nothing about who you are. So the biggest letting go that we have to do is letting go of fear. Fear is the only thing that keeps us from experiencing the fullness of love. Fear is what hardens our hearts. Fear is what closes off our hearts. The death of fear is resurrection. And when we don't fear, death has nothing on us. If we're not afraid, then we can face death. You know, this is what the mystics have said over and over and over again: keep death close. Now, what do they mean by that? They mean don't act like death is something far off. Don't act like it's not going to happen to you. Uncertainty is the way of life. It is the way of life. So face it, confront the fact of death, confront it, see it for what it is. None of us are guaranteed the next breath. None of us. None of us are guaranteed tonight or tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed another sunset or sunrise. And when we can keep that consciousness close, what does it do? It wakes us up. It says, don't waste the moment. Don't miss this moment, because it will never happen again. Be alive now. That's what he meant when he said again and again, you have to die if you want to live. Die to opinions, die to approval. Drop the story, the ones you tell about yourselves, the ones we tell about them, the ones we tell to justify our dis-ease and diagnoses. Die to who you were yesterday so you can be fully free and fully present now in this moment right here. And give that same grace to the people that you're holding grudges against, so that they too can be free to be new today. Jesus shows us that to stay in the flow of love, we also have to interfere with injustice when we see it, right? Justice is love in action. Justice is nothing more than proper response. It is appropriate action in the moment. We see this in the story of the woman who was caught in adultery. That's usually the title of the story, by the way, the woman who was caught in adultery. But whatever happened to the man, apparently he was not held to the same standard. But anyway, the woman who was caught in adultery was about to be stoned to death. And Jesus is out with his friends, and one of his friends taps him on the shoulder and he says, "Hey, look over here. Look what's about to happen." And there's a whole crowd gathered, and there's a woman standing in front of them, and they're holding their stones. You can almost see it, like they're tossing their stones up in the air and catching it and just looking at her with scorn, right? So what does he do? He interferes. He goes to the front of the crowd and he says to them, "Drop the story and see the person in front of you. She is us. She is you. She is me. Let the one among you without sin, let the one among you who has never lost their own integrity cast the first stone." And what happens? They drop their stones. And that thud of a dropping stone was her freedom, was her life, was her resurrection. And we can do that for each other. We may not stone each other with physical stones, but we throw stones all the time with our words, with our thoughts, with our tone. Drop the story and see. And that's the way to freedom. Another example was when he turned the tables over on the money changers in the temple, right? He goes to the temple, this sacred space, and he sees that people are, basically taking other people's money with no good reason. And he turns the tables over. And to me, what he's saying is when sacred space is being polluted, when innocence is being preyed upon, anger is an appropriate force of clearing and reclaiming that space. Anger can actually be an expression of love. But here's the thing. He didn't keep reliving it. He didn't go around gossiping about the money changers. He didn't go around saying how great he was for clearing the temple. He did it and he was done. He didn't relive it. He interfered with injustice in the moment. In neither case did he organize a committee. Did he gather, people together to create a mob? He didn't arrange a protest. He inserted himself in the moment that was right in front of him and interfered. He brought love to situations where love was called for, but remained absent. And we can do that. That's what justice is, bringing love to a situation where love is absent. He also showed us that to stay in the flow of love, we have to be generous with forgiveness. Right? When somebody said, how many times do I have to forgive this ass? How many times do I got to forgive them? What do you say? 70 times 7. In other words, be generous with forgiveness. Let go, let go, let go. And what is forgiveness except dropping the story? Right? It's letting go of resentment, letting go of anger, letting go of judgment. These things are not outside of us. They're not outside of us. Those feelings, those emotions are in us. They're in our minds, they're in our hearts, they're in our bodies. And when we let ourselves hold on to these things and replay them and relive them, they produce toxic chemicals that cause physical disease. And it diminishes our spirit. It diminishes our spirit. So we return to the flow of love through acceptance, accepting what happened and then starting again. And when we do that, we get another chance at life. And we give the person who was the source of the offense also another chance at life. But not if we keep carrying around the boulders of hatred and resentment or righteousness. I have a right to feel this way. Yeah, go ahead, feel it all you want, carry it all you want, but you're not hurting the person who hurt you. You're hurting yourself by carrying around a boulder that only you can decide to put down, right? This insistence that our lives would be better if XYZ never happened. It's just baggage. It's just baggage. That's why forgiveness is radical acceptance, acceptance of what happened, and then dropping the story and let's start again. Who do I want to be now, having had that experience? And finally, JC shows us that an easy way to stay in the flow of love is to find and do those things that we do just for the love of it. Just for the love of it, not for any other reason, not to get something back out of it, not to become a better person, not to do, but just for the pure and simple joy of it. Jesus wined and dined his way through Galilee with friends and strangers alike, sharing company and conversation and stories with women and children who were considered outcasts, with other outcasts, lepers, diseased people, as well as temple authorities, political leaders, and the spiritual sages of his day. And he shared food and conversation and connection for the love of it, not to move an agenda forward, not to start a movement or a religion, but for the love of it. Period. For the love of it. Think about when you do something just for the love of it and how it can lift, literally, okay, not literally, figuratively lift your spirits, right? We know that experience. We know that experience. You have that experience of doing those things just for the love of it. And what do you feel then? You feel free. You feel relaxed. You feel excited. You feel at ease. This is the kingdom, you guys. This is the kingdom that he was talking about. The kingdom wasn't a place and it wasn't somewhere we go after we die. It was an experience. It was the experience of love. It was the experience of being feeling connected in a world that would have us feel isolated all the time, that would have us be afraid. It was the experience of open-heartedness, of courage, of awakening. So we have to take DeMello's inquiry to heart from our reading today. How many activities can you count in your life that you engage in simply because they delight you and grip your soul? Find them out, cultivate them. They are our passport to love and freedom, and love and freedom are the way of emotional renewal. So what this tells me is that emotional renewal relies on an open heart. And that takes courage because there is pain. We will lose relationships. We will be betrayed. Loved ones will die. They will. They will. Face this fact. Face it. Face it so that you can be awake right now in this moment. In this moment, right? I don't know about you, but I don't want to go to my death having had a heart that was hardened, having a heart that's been closed. If I'm not here to love, then I don't know why the fuck I'm here. And loving takes risk, and it takes renewal, takes the courage to do it again and again and again after we've been hurt, after we've been betrayed, after we've experienced the trauma of death. But what else is there? What else is there? So when I think about the stories of Jesus, they're a call, an invitation to live life fully alive and fully awake so that we, like he, might go to our death without fear. Without fear. Have you ever seen anyone, witnessed anyone go to their death without fear? It's remarkable. I saw my mom do it. 24 months she lived with a terminal diagnosis, and I saw her let go of everything. Of everything. Of the roles, of the pain, of the joys, even. And she was free. She went into that new adventure, hands up, like on a roller coaster, not knowing what's to come. My God, I just think, what if she lived her life that way? What if I lived my life that way? Hands up, I don't know what's coming. Could be a hill, could be a sharp turn. I could get thrown out of the vehicle altogether. But can I do it with a spirit of love and excitement that this is what life really is? And not carrying with me the boulders of resentment, of hate, of the past, or the pressure of a future, right? But just be present, fully present now. The fact is, if we're holding on to anything, we're not present in the now. Just remember that meditation we did last week, how often our minds were in the past or the future. It's harder to do than we think, right? But what an invitation. What an invitation. I'll meet you on the ride. You go in the front seat, I'll sit in the second one. Hands up though. Woo! It's a roller coaster, and it's meant to be ridden with joy and love and excitement. And that, my friends, is emotional renewal. Thanks for listening, everybody. I look forward to meeting you right back here at the watering hole. And as Mary Oliver said, go easy, be filled with light, and shine.